Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing this morning? Good? Woohoo! How was day one of the Data Insights Summit? Good? Yeah, who's awake? Raise your hand. Okay, great. Only half the room. That's not good for us. Hi, my name is Łukasz Pawłowski. I'm a program manager on the Power BI embedded team. And I'm here with
Dima Datsenko. So I'm Dima Datsenko. I'm from the product team. Hey.
Yeah. So I'm the guy that talks, and he's the guy that actually makes it work. And so we're here to talk to you about building custom visuals, which we're really excited about because custom visuals have helped Power BI really help people see the data the way that they want to see it. And that's really what we're going to cover today in this session. Now, it's going to be a little bit more of a developer-focused session. So we're going to do a little bit of background. We'll have a couple of demos of partners doing work with our visualization stack just to show you what you can do. And then we'll go into an actual developer demo of how you actually build a custom visual. We'll start talking about some of the new APIs that we've created. Who has implemented a custom visual in the room? Okay, so we got a bunch of folks who haven't done it. Who is a JavaScript developer? Okay, not okay. Who knows TypeScript? That's a trick question. It should be a subset of, yeah, you should answer your question. You should raise your hand on every single one of these. So we're going to be talking about some technologies that perhaps you're not very familiar with, but we'll try to be gentle and introduce you to the concepts that you need to be successful with custom visuals. So here's what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to start off talking about custom visuals, what they do, why we built them, and give you some basic fundamentals of what custom visuals allow you to do. Hopefully, you'll see a couple of examples from a couple of partners that will really excite you. Right now, we have a partner team doing a whole nother session on their visual. So I'm going to show that thing, but you'll be able to view that whole session in the recordings afterwards. We'll talk about a quick tour of how you build a custom visual from soup to nuts, from everything that you have to put onto your machine to everything that you need to know in order to be successful with your building your first visual. And then we'll give you a bunch of resources to get you started. The deck will be available after this session, so you don't have to furiously write down all the detailed commands. You just copy and paste them, and our GitHub repo has a lot of that info. So let's start with the background of custom visuals. Custom visuals we conceived as a way that anyone in the world can unlock their data. We know that in many industries there are very specialized visualizations, and traditional data visualization tools don't provide those capabilities. We provide bar charts and line charts. We use all the visualization best practices. But sometimes when you need to present the data, you need to present it in just the right way so that someone can see the data, so they can understand it, so they can make decisions reliably and predictably in a fast-paced environment. And that's very much industry specific. Right? And so what we did was we open sourced all of the Power BI visuals. We put them out on GitHub. We MIT licensed them so you can use the code for commercial or personal use. And then what we did was we started the ability to, and built an API that allows developers to build their own visuals. And we built an ecosystem where a business user is in control. A business user can install the visual and start using it right away without a bunch of hassles. And this has fundamentally kind of changed the way people interact with custom visuals, and it has helped us explode the number of visuals. So you see a couple of visuals here on the screen. I like the one up at the very top is the Cushman & Wakefield example. Cushman & Wakefield is one of the largest building maintenance companies in the world. They do property management. And what they did was they decided to build themselves a visualization that shows which of their floors are rented and which ones are not, right? And so they built a 3D map. And that visual, that whole experience that you see in that little screenshot there, that's all a custom visual in Power BI. And then, of course, we have some other ones. We have Synoptic Panel. Do we have SQL BI folks in the house? No. But the SQL BI's partner of ours, they built this Synoptic Panel that allows you to take an SVG file and map onto it data from Power BI, right? So you can get a bunch of different experiences. We also have a gallery of visuals. If you go to visuals.powerbi.com, we have over 50 visuals. Maybe it's 60 or 70 now. And they just constantly get better as we go. Here's just a few examples that I think are really interesting because when you start thinking about what's the right way to visualize data, it's really about how your users are going to react to it. So we have an infographic visual, which is the one with all of the bottles, right? Which actually a visual built by the MSR team at Microsoft that allows you to create an infographic generically. You put in whatever shape you want, you bind in properties to data, off you go. With 3D map using WebGL, right? So someone showed me a 3JS. 3JS is a graphics library that does 3D graphics, right? And someone showed me another example just like this one that's using a 3D map. The Enlighten is a partner of ours. They built an aquarium, one of the most popular visualizations in the entire span of visualizations. And it's actually, they use it internally in their own business to talk about how teams are performing. People feel much happier about performance reviews when they're represented as a fish than when they're talking about how bad their quota was, right? So we have, go figure, right? We have route maps, right? This route maps and visualization, this is a visualization created by MSR, Microsoft Research, to test ways in which people understand routes, right? They're actually using Power BI as a test bed for ideas of how people understand data. Interesting. We have Sanddance, which is an interactive visualization experience for experiencing data. Every piece of data is like a granule of sand, and as you click around, they move around, so you can really get a feeling of the data. We have, the engine, which is implemented using Synaptic Panel. The last one on the bottom there is very interesting because that one is implemented using R. So in Power BI, we have an R service in our cloud service, right? You can install R and run it inside the Power BI desktop. And you can actually build custom visuals and package them and redistribute them using R. So if you have a bunch of ggplot experts, right, who know every little R trick in the world, you can have them package their knowledge, and then you as mere mortals, or me as a mere mortal, I can actually go use R when actually it's not approachable to me as a regular business user. So we have a great span of different kinds of visuals that you can create. So this brings me to how are partners actually using this technology. So I'm going to start with a company called Narrative Science. So Narrative Science is a company that specializes in advanced natural language generation. What does that mean? It's a big bunch of words. They take data and they turn them into understandable text. The challenge for many business analysts is while I may look at a chart, I may understand the trend, how do I communicate that to my manager? How much time does it take me to write out all those things? What they've done is they've applied machine learning to the problem of understanding data, and they generate text. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So here I am in Power BI Desktop, and this report doesn't look very special at the beginning. But I want to draw your attention to this particular visualization. Now, I'm just going to pull this up, and let's go zoom in on it a little bit. Right? So what you'll notice is that here there's a bunch of text. Right? It says something about delivered tons across services, and you'll notice that delivered tons increased in some areas but decreased in other areas. What this is narrative science taking data from Power BI, understanding it, and exposing text to the user so they can understand it. This text is fully interactive. So for example, if I go and click on a number of different data points here, you'll notice that this text actually updates and pulls out the insights for those pieces of data. So now as an analyst, when I'm looking to communicate to my boss, I don't have to write out exactly those labels. It's automatically done it for me, which is interesting when you think about like how quickly can you get insights and spread them across your organization. It even does things like it extracts key features and key metrics, which means that I might learn what data points I should be looking at, which categories I should be clicking, because there might be some lost leaders, there might be some laggards out there that I want to look at, but maybe as an analyst I can't do. Now this data set that I'm looking at is actually from Tazrail. Tazrail is a partner of Narrative Science. They're a leading logistics company in Australia. And so this is actually a mocked up data set over top of a real business scenario. Now let's take a look at how we actually go and use the Narrative Science visual. The Narrative Science visual provides you the ability to do rich configuration inside the visual. So for example, I can go and I can set up different synonyms in here, right? So for example, here you can see that it says all three services. Well, that's actually coming here from the language tab. So if I wanted to change that to be trains, I could, right? So I could just go ahead and go add a variation, say trains. Get rid of this one. And suddenly you can see that we have all three trains, right? So I can actually customize the overall experience. I can also go do a bunch of hints to the machine learning algorithms that they're applying. Tell them what the data is. We can describe relationships between the data points. So for example, if I bound two different data points, one was the current value, one was last quarter's value, it can say, hey, look, cars sold more this month than last month, and trucks, sales decreased, right? Now, it won't tell you why, but it'll tell you how much, and that will give the analyst the ability to communicate to their managers, and they can go and move one step faster to explaining the data. There's also a set of analytics that you can do, various kinds of segmentation, various kinds of trend lines, and so on and so forth. You can also, because you saw, I had, I don't know if this particular example shows it, but you can also highlight good numbers and bad numbers, so you can actually say, change all the various styles, so you can have those insights pop out. Now, how did they actually go build this? This is a custom visual, just like any custom visual in Power BI. It uses our JavaScript API. It uses our open source libraries. And it's just running here inside Power BI. It's actually bound to data from the data model. So you can actually see that it has data and whatnot. Now, if you were to actually go and get the visual, what you'd actually do is you'd come over to your browser, and you'd come over to Narrative Science's website, and you just go download their visual. Press the try it now, and go download it. So they're distributing. Now, they also sell this visual, which is actually interesting, because some organizations, and there are, whether it's a service provider like Narrative Science, or solutions integrators who build a lot of visuals for contract work, right? Or just even pure plays that are shipping into our store and exposing their visuals. We're actually building this ecosystem not only of enthusiasts who create custom visuals, not only enterprises who create custom visuals internally, but we're also creating markets for people so that they can actually gain value from the custom visual ecosystem. So this is the first example, I think, of how we're actually doing with custom visuals, is enabling organizations to really build businesses around custom visuals. Now, we're really excited to announce something new today as well, which is Visio, the premier enterprise-grade diagramming tool, now has a custom visual for Power BI. Starting today, there's a private preview available. The link, if you go to this link, you can go download that visual. Now, it's going to ship out in July, but let's take a look at how diagramming and supporting diagramming with Power BI data can transform your business. So now, on the screen here, what I actually have is I'm in PowerBI.com. Of course, I could be in Power BI Desktop, but I showed Power BI Desktop before, so why not show PowerBI.com now? Now, what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to show you an organization chart. Organization charts are one of the fundamental ways that we understand businesses. We do roll-ups. We see how one organization is profiting, another one maybe not quite achieving its goals. And of course, around person review time every year, everyone wants to know how things are going, right? And so this is typically the way that managers kind of understand their org. So now, it's not been possible to create org charts that are data-driven very easily in Power BI. But more importantly, you'll notice that these org chart elements, they're all data-driven. So these colors are not actually in the Visio file. They're actually bound through Power BI and logic that's applied in the Visio file. The other thing that's interesting, if I see this particular person here, you notice that their business is kind of not doing as well as others. And what you'll notice is that this Visio visual is fully interactive in Power BI. In fact, it filtered all of these items, so I can see exactly which one it is over here. But also this other Visio visual, this is a process diagram. Processes are maybe the other quintessential thing that we do in business, is we have nonlinear processes. And while there are many custom visuals out there that create networks and things that are easy to understand from the viewpoint of relationships between data, processes are fundamentally nonlinear. They circle and repeat, and it's just hard to understand them. And a diagramming tool like Visio enables you to express those processes so that you can understand them at the business level. And in this particular case, what's happened is, as I clicked on this particular manager's organization, I can see exactly which parts of the process, these red items right here in the telephonic area, which items are the ones that are causing issues. And this particular one that I've just highlighted, you probably can't read it, but it says opportunity to order. You'll notice that it has a link. So in the Visio experience, I'm actually able to annotate shapes with actions. And the Visio visual allows me to expose that action. So when I click on that opportunity to order, it actually opens another Power BI report, which is just a URL to a Power BI report. And you'll see here that we can drill in and we can see what the underlying issue is. And again, I'm using a Visio visual here. So I just expand that out a little bit. And you can see that this save in cloud servers step is the one that's it's causing. So now I can understand for all of the problems that I had at the high-level organization, I was able to drill into a very complex set of processes and understand which step. It's probably here I've over-provisioned some server farm somewhere. I can go look at that and I can go save on a couple of costs. But having that kind of visibility across very complex processes is actually interesting. So let's see how you actually go build one of those. So the first thing that you should know is the Visio Visual works with Visio. And Visio can be data bound, which means that I can take a data set like this one. This is probably a data set that you guys are pretty familiar with. And you'll notice over here that I have something called a process ID. So each one of those boxes in the Visio diagram has an ID associated with it. Let's take a look at how you actually go do that. So if I'm in one of my processes, now I've just opened the Visio program. And within Visio, each one of these boxes, if I just select on this particular one, you'll notice up here in the corner, I can go set a set of properties on it. And one of them is this process ID that's right there, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to bind between the data and the metadata that's defined in the diagram. Now, of course, Visio is very flexible, so if I really wanted to, while this is a process diagram, I could use any of their shapes, right? So I could go use flow charting, engineering charts, business charts, networks, floor maps and plans, you name it, I can express it in Visio, and it'll just work the same way once it's in Power BI. The next step, after I've annotated my shapes with these identifiers, what I do is I actually go and I publish it up to Visio. Or sorry, to Visio Online. How do I do that? I just took that file and put it in my OneDrive for Business. Okay, that's all I did. And so now here it is in the web, looks just as great as it was. And you'll notice that there are no colors associated with this, right? So like those colors, they came from somewhere. Let's go see how that actually works. So what I do is I just grab this copy of this URL, which is just the SharePoint Online URL to this Visio. And then I can come back into my report here, and I can press edit, right? So we'll just go edit this, and what we'll do is we'll just create a new page here, and I'll just insert the Visio visual. So as with all visuals in Power BI, what I need to do is I need to bind some data. So let's go ahead and throw that in here. And you'll notice that the Visio visual asks me for a file URL. And I apologize for all those viewing on the screen. There's some idiosyncrasy on the projector here. But I'll just paste that URL in. I'll just press connect. And then what you'll see here is that immediately this diagram loads in. Okay, so I can kind of go see that. The next thing that you'll see is there's a mapping UI in here. And in this mapping UI, you can see that I can define the mapping between those fields, right? I can say which one is which, right? So I can go select the various items and pull it in. And I can also go set up a set of properties here, right? Setting up colors, setting up text, setting up things. So I can actually go and do that. And then after a few manipulations, I'll be able to go and get a diagram just like this one where it's fully integrated. So let's take a look at that, right? So here what you have is I have the ID binding, and you can see it's bound to colors, and I can add more rules if I wished to, right? So in this way, I've taken any generic Visio diagram, any one I can possibly imagine. I've bound it to data in Power BI. So again, this is a private preview that has just started today and is available for next month, and in July we believe it's going to go and be available for anyone in the Office store. Okay, so this is how the Visio team is using the Power BI capabilities and the custom visuals APIs. What's interesting about both these visuals, both Narrative Science as well as Visio, is they're just using the same APIs you all can use to build and deliver custom visualizations to your users. Okay. So great. Let's talk a little bit about the platform that we have for custom visuals. So we have an open source repo. It's out on GitHub. We've built a community and a bunch of examples for people publishing visuals and examples using D3 or jQuery, also like WebGL and R and so forth, and providing a set of capabilities. The R visuals are really unique. It really allows you to just make portable R visuals without having to have an R expert on your staff. One major thing that we've done in the last year or so is we've built, maybe is it 6 versions of, and going on to 7, of a versioned API. And what that means is that we do the hard work to make sure that your visuals work across updates to the Power BI service. Because we iterate very quickly. We update every week. And so we've built this versioned API that allows you to build robust visuals. And then we've also built a sandbox. The sandbox solves a lot of the sins that we had when we first release custom visuals. When we first released custom visuals, visuals were all on the same page. Oftentimes, the code for one visual impacted the code for another visual, and things went wonky. So we've built this secure sandbox so the visuals are isolated from each other, and they can't break out of that sandbox, so they're also more secure. And altogether, this allows you to visualize it however you want. One thing that we're really excited about is the Office Store. One challenge that we had is how do people find visualizations? We had a website. Now what we've done is we've actually integrated all of the visuals into the Office Store so that business users have one place to get all of the visuals. And we have a more robust publishing system so that you can actually go publish your visuals. You can also get ratings on your visuals so you know what the feedback is from users. As a user, you can find out which visuals are high quality and which ones might need a little bit of work. Right? So that's all available today on the Office Store. Now, we're really excited to announce today that we're bringing that Office Store directly into the Power BI product. So you won't have to go to some website anymore. You won't have to go download a visual. You can actually go do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dima, who is going to do a quick demo.
Thanks, Łukasz. I'm really excited to be here with all of you guys, and we are talking about custom visuals. So many of you are probably familiar with the old way of importing a custom visual from the local file. Like, the only problem is where to get this file. Okay, so I don't see any URL, any hint here. Generally, you should go to Power BI Gallery, but, well, it's not written here. So what we've done is to ease up the usage and discovering and searching and importing of custom visuals. We did this. So one click and you got access to all the custom visuals available in the Office Store. These visuals are searchable by category. Here I click on filters and got all the visuals that filter data. And you also can search by the keyword. Let's search by word. And we got word cloud. So if we drill down, we can see the user rating, the snapshots of the visual, and the user feedbacks. So this specific visual got great feedbacks. All of visual got great feedbacks. We won't go and search any other, but believe me, they don't. Okay, so here all we need to do is just to click add, and the visual will appear in the visualization pane. Thank you. So I click here, I add the data, and we got word cloud on our Power BI desktop. This functionality will be also available in Power BI Service when you work in the authoring mode. Thank you. Back to you, Łukasz.
Great. Thank you, Dima. So what we're really doing is, we started building custom visuals. We started making it easy for developers to develop visuals. We made it easy for enthusiasts to share and collaborate and build out a community of people who know how to build visuals. And now we're going to the next step, making it easy for people in organizations to find your visuals, consume your visuals, and make it easy for you to distribute your visuals to the world of people who are using Office. So let's see. So now, let's take a little bit about how do you actually get a visual in that store. So the first thing that you need to know is that you need to be a developer, right? Building a visual takes a little bit of time. While if you're not a developer, like I asked the question, like who actually let me ask a different question. Who writes C# code in this room? Okay, a little bit more. Who writes Java code? Okay, who doesn't know what code is? Okay, that's tricky. Okay, I'm just seeing if you're awake. So what you do is you start as a developer, right? So you'll need some skills. You'll need some JavaScript and TypeScript skills, right? This is a commodity skill today. Many people choose to use D3, which is a framework for building visualizations, specifically a framework for manipulating HTML elements on an HTML page. It really accelerates your ability to build visuals. But you're not limited to D3. You can use HTTP Canvas, which is a more even primitive way of building visuals, or you can use libraries like WebGL or even R. But you will start with a person who knows how to write code and a developer. So you'll start planning your visual, creating the visual, and you'll integrate with our custom visual SDK. This SDK is available on GitHub, and it installs on your computer, and I think Dima will show you the basics of it here in a second. And once you have that, you're going to use our versioned API. If you started with us 2 years ago when we introduced for the first time custom visuals, that API is a legacy API. So if you did start with that API, you want to move to the new API and start using the versioned API. Any visual that goes into the Office Store must use that versioned API. Okay, so, and that API is your friend, so you will like it once you start using it. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to do some testing. You'll do it in 2 phases. The first phase will be kind of like playing it around with it in Power BI Desktop, using it in Power BI Service. You'll test it on our mobile apps to make sure it actually works there as well, and so on and so forth. The second piece is once you package it and you submit it to our service, what do you do to our store? We will do some verification and testing. And so you'll probably need to plan for some iteration there because we have a bunch of folks that will go and make sure that your visual is high quality enough to reach the users, the general population of Power BI users. And once you've submitted it, you'll go into the Office Store. Now, interestingly, you'll need to have an Office Seller Dashboard account in order to do that. There is a one-time registration fee for that, but once you're in and verified as a seller, you can actually go manage your visuals very easily through that. And then once it's in the store, as Dima was showing, you'll be able to see that visual immediately in Power BI Desktop and in the Power BI Service so that you can distribute it out very, very easily. So now let's take a little bit about transitioning a little bit and talk about the tooling. So the tooling for Power BI for building visuals has 2 major pieces. The first is some client libraries that you'll download from our GitHub page and will run in a console. They are platform agnostic. They work on Windows, but they also work on Linux, right? So you'll be able to develop them in the environment that you have. The second piece of the puzzle is actually some developer tools that are in our cloud service. And the developer tools in the cloud service allow you to test and debug, and we'll show you that here in a second. So things that you need to know about these tools. They use our versioned APIs by default, right? So if you start here, you don't have to do anything. You'll automatically start thing. There's a sandbox iframe that will run in our browser. And when you're using these tools, you'll connect those 2 together using HTTP server. So we'll show you how that works. But what that allows you to do is it allows you to code on your local box, and as you make changes, it'll auto-compile, and you can just immediately debug in Power BI without doing a whole bunch of packaging and mumbo-jumbo. So it's really, really fast to build a visual. The sandbox does enforce a couple of things. It prevents you from accessing our HTML page content, so it isolates you. It also prevents conflicts across visuals. We had lots of challenges when we first rolled out custom visuals, especially with CSS class names. Many people would have a class name called text, and everyone would have a different size and color and text, and they would all sort of conflict. Well, guess what? You can't do that anymore with the sandbox. And the last thing, it does enforce the APIs. We've also added a set of helper classes. We'll talk a little bit more about them after the demo, where we've made it even easier for you to build visuals. This is a slide that I'm not going to go through in detail, but it's for you for afterwards. Most people print this and put it on their wall. This is your cheat sheet. It tells you everything you need to know to get started, whether it's where you get the documentation, how to install the tools, how to enable the developer visual, and all the sort of basic steps for getting started. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dima, to show us how the magic is made.
Yeah, thank you, Łukasz. So we install the tools, and we're set to go, and we can create a new visual. So, okay, we open PowerShell, and we create a new visual by simply typing pbiviz new. Let's call our visual test. Okay, the visual is created, so we don't need 10 minutes for that. We can go into the visual itself. It's a folder with a bunch of files, and we can just ensure that all the dependencies are installed. Well, because it was a new visual, we needed to install some dependencies, data view utils. So we'll talk about it later, but now we are set and we can run this visual. pbiviz start. And what happens behind the scene is the HTTP server is created on port 8080, and we can consume this developer visual on this port from a front-end portal of Power BI. So the difference is from the regular Power BI is that we've enabled a developer mode that added a special visual named developer visual here on the visualization pane. So what we're going to do, we insert this visual, and this visual connects directly to the local service that I've just run. So the visual I just created is consumed right here. This visual is not a perfect visual, and we cannot do much with it, but it reacts on UI interactions. It has some field wells preset, like category data and measure data, and it has some basic properties that allow us to control its behavior. So if we try to put some value, some data into the measure data, nothing happens besides updating the UI counter. So what we're going to do now, we are going to improve this visual to actually show the data and look nice. So I have a slide here prepared for you, what we are going to do behind the scenes to make it work. We install D3, we inject some files definition into the file tree, but we're going to skip it. I have a visual that I prepared with all these steps, and we can just use it. So I stop this visual and switch to a prepared visual. So
for everyone who's taking photos of that slide, it's in the slide deck after the break at the end. Yeah. So you don't have to memorize. There will be a test afterwards, right? There will be extra special treatment for folks who actually memorize all those NPM modules.
Thank you, Łukasz. So I can run VS Code from here. And we see that this is the directory folder for the visual we've created. So it doesn't differ much from the original visual. We can run start PBIviz again. We run this service here. The visual is compiled and it runs again. So if we go to the service and refresh, we see that it's the same one. It's the same one, besides of having D3 added to it, besides of adding a D3 file named circle.ts that actually implements drawing the circle, but currently it's not connected. So what we're going to do is to connect this circle to the base file. So the base file here is visual.ts. It contains all the logic that renders your visual. The major function here is update. This is a function that is called the Power BI framework to notify the visual that it should render something. So currently we have here update count string, but what we're going to do, we're going to replace it with the circle code. So I copy and paste here the call to the circle class instead of these two lines. Okay, circle update, we provide width, height, value, a label, and the color. As you can see, the values are hard-coded. We don't connect it to the data yet. We only change the visual representation. So to be able to call update on the circle, we first need to instantiate it. So I copy-paste the definition into the constructor. And to do this stuff, we need to declare. So naturally, I need yet another line to be put here instead of these two because we don't need them anymore. As I click Control S, the file got saved and the server picks up the changes and recompiles them, as you can see, automatically. So build complete, we compiled OK. So what we're going to do is to go here and hit refresh. We got a nicer visual now. So what we need to do is to connect this data that we put on Fieldwell to be represented here. And for that, we'll use data binding. So it's not very difficult to. We go back to our function. Naturally, we need to replace this value string by an actual data. So to do that, we extract the data from the parameter provided us to the function call. We got data view that comes from options. That options is the parameter provided to us. And we use this data view to represent the actual value. Another thing that we can do, since we get the value as quantity, we can replace the label to be shown the actual name of the data member. So what we do, we replace this label with another property of data view. And the thing that I love VS Code for is auto alignment. Okay, we are set. We save. We go back to the portal, and we hit refresh. This is the second stage. So first, what we did, we got file circle.ts. I actually didn't write this file. Someone who knows this rewrote it for me, but I specified what I need to do. I want to put width, height, value, title, number, label, and the color. So, okay, now I connected data to it, and it looks already not bad. But the problem is with this number, I remember that the model I created actually had text formatting in it. So if I take a native visual, let's say multi-row card, and put the same quantity, remember here I can see that the data is formatted with commas. I would like to have that, because I also have here, for example, efficiency that is formatted as %. It's a property of the model, but somehow I want to utilize it in my custom visual. So to do that, I need to install a set of tools that belongs to a bigger and nicer family that Lukasz will show later. And installing data view utils is here on the second slide. So it's called formatting utils. We perform some NPM installs, and then we need to update files. We won't do it now because I did it in advance. So all we need to do is to use value formatter for this. So the tools are there. We only use them. We take the namespace declaration. We put it here, taken from the utilities namespace. We have the formatter declaration. We put it here in the update method. So what we do here, we extract the format data from the metadata, actually from the model, and the create formatter, which takes the data and format it as a proper string instead of commas or %. So instead of using data value as string, we'll use a formatted value from the formatter. As I save, I go back, and I can refresh it once again. Data becomes formatted. So now, if I change a different field, change it to a different field, let's say efficiency, we see % appearing here. Next. We saw that the visual has default properties. We want to use these properties to change the visual color. So I got some colors here, but it comes from the default visual, and if I change it, it doesn't do anything to the visual because I didn't connect it. I have a hard-coded white string there. So what we're going to do is to go to the visual definition. And now it's going to be a little bit confusing. Till now, we worked on the single file, visual.ts. Now we go to a different file named capabilities.json, which contains the capabilities for the visual. It includes the field values, like measure and categories, and also object for the properties. So all of these properties we remove because we don't need it. It came from the default visual. And instead of it, we insert the property that will serve us for our circle. Let's see. So circle has a display name named circle. So this is something that will appear as a property set name. This property set has single property named circle color. And as you can see, type field solid. It's a stream of definitions that will give you a color picker. So you easily pick a color. From the color picker, you'll see it. You just saw it in the default vision. But it's only a definition, and we need to connect the data model to the visual. So we're going to yet another file. It's got more and more confusing. This file connects the settings to the visual, and I just copy and paste it. So we just defined a new settings model that contains circle color connected to the definitions that we did before. So after we save it, we can go and refresh our visual. And we should see it appear at some stage, maybe later. Now we just need to bind the color formatting to the visual. So what we do, we change white color to something that comes from the visual definition. Oh. I'm sorry? Yeah. So, okay, settings was predefined in the default visual, so we don't need to instantiate it. All we do, we use it. So let's see it works. Let's take this visual out and reinsert it. We still don't see it. Thank you.
So one thing you notice as Dima's doing this, we're automatically compiling, right? So it's very natural as you're developing, right? You make a change, see if it works, and you're going to go iterate very quickly. There's no big, long build cycle for it.
Right. So now that I, thanks to you, saved the correct file, I got this property set here, named circle. We got color, and due to the correct type used, we got a color picker. You can choose any color you'd like, as long as it, and it works. So we've just seen as I took a default visual that did nothing but provided me a good framework to build a really working visual on top of it with data binding, data coloring, and text formatting. Thank you.
Great. So thank you, Dima. So that was an amazing experience. What we saw was that Dima took some D3 code that he got from someone who knows D3 and quickly bound it to data coming from Power BI. That data view class, that utility that he saw, what it allowed him to do is it allowed him to abstract from that visual any data source in Power BI, whether it's the smallest Excel file to the largest HD Insight cluster that's out there, all work the exact same way. And when he packages the visual and then puts it into the store, he can actually create a reusable, portable visual. So no longer are you building a visual for one page of your application. You're actually building a reusable visual that can be used across many, many different views of the data. So let's talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done underneath the covers in terms of providing APIs. The number one API that people asked us for was the drill down API. In native visuals in Power BI, you can go and drill down and drill in on individual data points. So now in the versioned API, there's a drill down capability, so you can implement the same thing. One major thing that we've added, I'm going to show you a slide around it here in a second, is localization. When you're building a visual for a global environment, you need to be able to support not only English strings. And what we've done is we've allowed the visual authors to fully localize their visual, not only inside their visual in the code that they own, but also in how it integrates with our framework. There's two very nuanced kind of experiences. One is allow interactions. We had a gap in terms of allowing visual authors to know that they're hosted on a dashboard. The allow interactions switch that allows you to turn off interactivity on dashboards so that your visual behaves just like our visuals behave. So you can conform more to the norms. Edit mode is an awesome experience. You kind of saw it in the narrative science visual. The Visio visual is using it. The Esri ArcGIS Maps visual is using it. What it allows you to do is it allows you to, in the editing experience, open up additional UI inside your visual so that you can have more detailed property settings. And that works within the ecosystem and the life cycle of our visualizations. Another great one that we added, and this is, we got a lot of feedback on it, is tooltips. Tooltips in Power BI have specific behaviors. They can span outside of a visual, for example, and they have specific things that you can add to them, like additional tooltip fields. We've exposed an API that allows you as a visual author to go implement those tooltips. And then utilities. We already got a little bit of a hint of the utilities from Dima's demo, and it's so big, I've got another slide to it. But before I go on, I just want you to be aware that our GitHub repo is out on Power BI Visuals, on Microsoft Power BI Visuals on GitHub, and there's a changelog.md file. We are constantly adding new utilities and constantly adding more to that API. So check out that changelog to see what all the latest things are. Utilities. You already saw a few of these. You saw the data view utilities in the demo. You saw the color formatting and formatting utilities. What I'll say is that if you dig into these, you will see there's a lot of value in there. And it's all about making sure that you can efficiently write custom visuals that are robust, so you're not spending a lot of time working with our native structures. I'll call out a few of them that are also kind of interesting, because you'll see some SVG utils. If you are doing a bunch of D3 code, underneath the covers it creates SVGs. Working with SVGs can be cumbersome, so we've started to create a set of utilities for all of the common operations Microsoft is doing in our visuals, and we're providing them out for you so that you can leverage our work. The other one that's great is chart utils. That I think are interesting, because many times when you're building a visual, you need axes, and building axes that work the same way as Power BI axes is kind of hard and nuanced. Well, guess what? There's an axis class in the chart utils. We just start off and build an axis. And so we're trying to make it really, really easy for you to build standardized codes, save yourself some time, and then build high-quality, robust visuals. Now, I wanted to spend just a minute on localization, because it's such a big topic. And this is something that you don't really think about as a custom visual developer initially, usually. It is something, though, that I think is really important. So what we've done is we've added the ability to go create localization. And so Dima showed the capabilities JSON. And you'll notice here in the data roles, you can now annotate your visual with a display name key. And this key is the magic that is going to drive the localization for our UI. In Power BI, we auto-generate all of the UI in the fields well, right? So with the fields or the formatting panes, all those things. And so what you're able to do is you're able to define for each of the properties in your visual a key. And then in another file, you're able to provide the localization. So in this particular case, we've added a locale for Hebrew. And you can see here, personally, I can't read this, but I'm sure Dima can tell us what it says. I'm quite confident it says category. But you can see that it has the two items. And so this allows you to take your visualizations to the next level and really start meeting enterprise-grade requirements with your custom visuals. The other thing that we've done, and we sort of skipped over it in the demo just for time reasons, we have this developer visual. The key thing to know about the developer visual is when you log into PowerBI.com, under the settings gear, there's this property called Enable Developer Visual under the Developer tab. You need to check that for each browser that you're using, right? So if you're using Chrome, if you're using Firefox, if you're using Edge, each browser you need to do it once, and then it persists. And then it just sort of logs in together. One last thing that I wanted to kind of mention is that our visuals are there. And we spend a fair bit of time writing JavaScript visuals in the demo, but our visuals are an equally compelling way to create insights. And the R visuals are just as packageable. So just like using the same CLI tool as Dima was showing, you can build an R visual. You can test it in the same way. And then you can package it and redistribute it just like you can any of the other visuals that you have in Power BI. And what that means is you can really put the power of R into the hands of regular business users. We also, if you go into the Office store, you will find that all of the visuals are treated the same. Whether they're JavaScript or R, you'll just see a little R logo that tells you, hey, this one's implemented using R. But you can just go use them exactly the same way. The one thing that you should know about our visuals, though, is that they're not as interactive as the visuals we have in the JavaScript. So we are trying to close that gap a little bit. So we've introduced a new HTML widgets support. So R has this HTML widgets capability. We've added it. We took it out of the service. We've added it back in. We're working through the bugs. We're trying to make the R visual. We're trying to push the boundaries of what you can do with R to have the same kinds of visualizations as you have in JavaScript. So with that, I want to share a bunch of useful links. There's probably way too much here for you to take in all at once. If you go to dev.powerbi.com, that's our developer portal, and go see all that stuff. And then here's if you want to take one picture of the entire slide, of the entire presentation, this is the one. Getting started Power BI visuals out on GitHub. It'll give you all of the wikis, all of the documentation. You get the client tools that Dima created, and you'll be able to go in and pull that in. Try some of our visuals out on the Office Store. They're available today. And dev.powerbi.com is where you will find all of our developer story. Beyond custom visuals, you can also embed Power BI. You can use our JavaScript to create really rich integrated experience in your applications, portals, internal, external, packaged applications, so forth. You can even push data to create real-time data sets. There's a whole bunch of goodness on dev.powerbi.com. I encourage you to go check it out. There's a prize. Fill out your evals and try to get a prize. There's book signings, highly recommended. Evaluate our session. We'd love to hear your feedback. Good stuff, bad stuff, whatever it is. Give us prizes, give us sweets. We're more than happy to accept. And then with that, we have just a couple of minutes, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. The question is, where do you get the slide deck? I believe it should be out on the HubMe site. And I'll make sure after this session that it actually gets propped if it's not already there.
When you move from the visuals to Office Store, is that, thank you. With the visuals moving to Office Store, is that going to take care of the versioning issue? Is there any auto update involved? Or?
Yeah. So the way the Office Store works is once you publish a visual to the Office Store, we are in Power BI, we know what the latest version is. So let's say a user has used your visual, right? And when the user opens that visual, we'll download the latest version of your visual and use that instead. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. And then from the API versioning, once you've implemented visual using a specific API, we on our side take care of making sure that Power BI isolates your visual from any API changes that are happening under the covers, right? So you can have a nice stable visual.
Great, thank you.
Good.
What's the best way to find developers for custom visuals?
Oh, that's a great question. What's the best way to find developers for custom visuals? There's a couple of things we're going to be doing around making those more prominent on our site. I think that if you go to our community, we have a developer forum. If you ask there, you will get 1,000 recommendations.
Great.
Right? So community.powerbi.com.
Thank you.
One thing, the D3, it's kind of an awkward experience, you know, creating a D3 and then looking at it and so forth. Are there any recommendations for any D3 tools that you could, you know, like kind of create the D3 and then you know, copy and paste it over? Or?
Yeah, so the question is, like, working with D3 can be a little bit awkward. How do you actually go and get started? Is there a tool for building D3 visuals and then sort of importing them? There isn't really right now, and I'll tell you why. A lot of the D3 examples, like if you go to d3js.org, they're hard-coded in a single web page, and they take a very strong coupling between the visualization layer and the actual data presentation. So you'll find in there, like if you look at some of the network graph examples, they use these crazy ragged hierarchy data objects. And so if you try to use that D3 visual in Power BI, try to adapt it, you're going to do a lot of work to make sure that everything winds and binds together. I do think that there's a couple of great experiences. If you go to Block Builder, if you search for Block Builder, it's an experience built by a guy, Ian Johnson, out of the Valley. And it's an experience for helping you start with an existing D3 experience from someone that's created and edit it. You can try to use sort of tools like that. Okay. I have time for like maybe 2 more questions, and then we need to let the other folks. There's a question here. Yes?
Scenes or responsiveness, is that something we need to account for as developers, or is that kind of taken care of?
It's a good question. So is responsiveness taken care of in Power BI's code? Power BI doesn't change the way your visual renders. So everything that's inside the visual box, that's your responsibility. So if you want axes to drop when it gets too small, you have to code that. Okay? One more question, and then we'll answer some questions outside.
On the gallery, are they automatically replaced with the store version, or I have to take care of that?
Yeah, so the question is, we had this gallery, visuals.powerbi.com. If I downloaded a version from that, what happens with it with the store? So let me explain what's happening underneath the covers. Whichever gallery you pulled from, whether it's the old Custom Visuals gallery or the store, all those visuals get put on a CDN that we own and manage. So they always get updated with whatever the latest version is, right? So you'll just automatically do it. Now, at some point, so I don't think we've removed any visuals from that CDN at this point. At some point, we might. Some visual might be terribly bad, and we just want to remove it for whatever reason. At which point, if you have a version of the visual in a file, we'll use that one. So another kind of example is, what happens to a custom visual when I go on an airplane and I don't have a network connection, right? We'll use whatever version's in that Power BI desktop file at that moment in time. Okay, great. Thank you so much. We'll answer a few more questions outside. Really appreciate you coming and enjoy the Custom Visuals APIs.